Welcome back, everyone. Toy Shiz here, and I am back yet again to give you guys another retro shiz look back at the past. And today, we are going to be checking out the brand new Hasbro Marvel Legends Retro Spider-Man the Animated Series, Wave 3, and some very cool characters in this wave. Brings back a lot of that nostalgia, and just as a heads up, I am fully aware that this is loosely based off Spider-Man the Animated Series. All that gorgeous cardback art, all the different logos, everything is meant to evoke that Toy Biz nostalgia. So we're going to go over Spider-Man the Animated Series in a exquisite detail. We're going to see how they stack up compared to the old Toy Biz action figures back in the day, back in the 90s, right? And we're going to have some fun today. So, sit back, relax, grab yourself a nice hot cup of coffee. Oh, wait, I guess I should go over each of the figures first before we have that coffee, right? So, first and foremost, we have Ben Reilly, the new Spider-Man. I'm going to talk about him first, just in a light sense, because when I got this figure back in the day, seeing that artwork at the top of the box, the Amazing Spider-Man in a completely different Spider-Man costume, totally threw me for a loop. As a kid, I was well aware of Ben Reilly, the whole maximum clonage thing, as much as one kid could be aware for back in the day, right? So essentially it's Peter Parker became Ben Reilly, who was the clone, but he's not really the clone, and now he's Peter Parker under a new name. It made no sense. We'll see how this figure stacks up. Then we have the Shocker, which he looks pretty dang cool, right? Mixed with comic book kind of sort of animated series, but I really like that they gave a whole bunch of new stuff for this particular Shocker. And then you have the Spider Armor, whatever you want to call it. You know, I call it Spider Armor, sure. Armored Spider-Man MK1, loosely kind of comic book, more so the new Spider-Man video game kind of deal. So yeah, we'll take a look at how he compares. Hobgoblin. This is one that I got a lot to say about this guy. The artwork, first and foremost, is great. Evokes all that old Spider-Man the Animated Series, especially with the tattered cape, right? And we'll talk about that. I'm going to rake this figure across the coals. No, just kidding. We're going to have some fun. But I'm going to point out a lot of things with this Hobgoblin. Just an FYI. One of my favorite Spider-Man the Animated Series villains, of course, as he should be, Mr. Mark Hamill himself, voicing him. I always liked that. Joker, and then you had a Hobgoblin for Spider-Man. So you can read up about him as well. This one is one that I am exquisitely stoked that they did a new figure for, and invokes a lot of Spider-Man the Animated Series. That's for sure. Kingpin's man, or Silvermane's man, whatever you want to say, right? You have Hammerhead. Now, he's kind of sort of Spider-Man the Animated Series. In the colors, not so much, but again, we'll talk about him, but he does come with some various accessories, which is cool. He's going to be more so comic book on this, of course, but he's got that flat top going on, that's for sure, right? And then, oh man, finally, they made a alien costume or symbiote Spider-Man. Oh, all these years, they've never had him, right? Well, we'll talk about him as well. Very cool to have yet another symbiote Spider-Man, right? Not too shabby, I will say, of all the symbiote Spider-Mans in my collection. But yeah, Toy Biz really introduced me to the symbiote Spider-Man. You can read all about him. And I really like that they mentioned more so his role in Spider-Man the Animated Series on this card back with the whole space shuttle wreck. So this goes to show you, yeah, they're really shooting for the Spider-Man animated. Plus, they got that gorgeous artwork recreation by Harry Moore Design. So this is going to be an absolute blast. Spider-Man the Animated Series means a great deal to me. I'm sure you've seen all my videos by now if you've been watching this channel. So you get the idea of where I'm going with this. So sit back, finally, relax, grab yourself a nice hot cup of coffee. This is a look at the brand new Hasbro Marvel Legends Retro Spider-Man the Animated Series. Kinda, sorta. And while I got all you radioactive spiders here, I just want to say thanks so much for always checking out my retro shiz videos. Hopefully you'll consider subscribing if you haven't already. Old Toys, New Toys, daily news updates. I guarantee you'll find something here that you like. Now, to kick it off, we're going with Ben Reilly again. This one, again, like I said, Ben Reilly, this Spider-Man, this look, this costume, never appeared in any capacity for Spider-Man the Animated Series. However, he was in the Toy Biz line. Of course, I'm going to pull out that old figures, actually. There was a box set as well. But if you want to go more into detail about him later, I do have videos up on all the different waves and everything else for the old Toy Biz Spider-Man the Animated Series. Now, he does come with various sets of hands. You got wall crawling, thwipping, punching, no weapon holding, nothing holding hands, but you do get a new Spider-Man on that new body that they did with the beginning of the animated Spider-Man line. Overall, it's the same exact articulation you've come to expect. And to be honest, I do look forward to a pinless Spider-Man. For me, it goes either way, but when the pins don't match up, that's when I kind of go, eh, come on, you've had all this time. You can do something different. Couple nicks here and there, we'll say, if anything, with the paint. But overall, it's a pretty solid looking Ben Reilly Spider-Man, and I'm actually pretty stoked on it. I mean, a lot of people, they put so much emphasis on all the articulation and everything. For me, it does the trick in spades, right? So you can fiddle with it, take it in the bath, whatever some of you peoples do with the articulated Spider-Mans. But for me, it goes right on the shelf, and whatever he can achieve pose-wise, yeah, he does a good job. He's even got the web shooters. I wish that they had a little bit more detail, wash to him, and an extra head portrait, like a very blonde Ben Reilly Peter Parker would have been awesome to kind of throw in the packaging. When you look at him with the Scarlet Spider, the original Toy Biz one, you see, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it's kind of cool to see them up against one another. But then the real kicker, like I said, seeing the new costume Spider-Man on that Toy Biz packaging certainly threw me for a loop. I'm like, whoa, wait, is this going to show up in the animated series? How is this going to go? One thing that this new Ben Reilly Spider-Man is definitely missing is the whole containment gear, right? The rocket pack and everything else. And then you got the maximum clonage box set, the more darker blue Spider-Man right there. Now, some years back, we did get a Ben Reilly figure that was a little bit skinnier. You could swap out the parts and pieces and make Spider Carnage. So just for giggles, right, here's a couple of the old Toy Biz Spider Carnage. Again, the initial release from Along Came a Spider, and then some years later, they did a box set where it had more blues, more going on that you could see the actual costume. And then, of course, you know, however this happened to my collection and all those Spider-Man collecting years, you have the more 10-inch superposable Ben Reilly figure. So yeah, I've had a superposable Ben Reilly Spider-Man figure for quite some time now. It's always nice to get another one, right? Buy the same figure over and over. And then to top it off, yes, you have May Parker, daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson, of course, sporting the old Ben Reilly costume. So lots of different Ben Reillys in the collection. And of course, this one is no exception. Nicely articulated. Couple things here and there I would have changed, but overall, pretty darn cool. Which brings us to the crime guy, right? He actually made his first appearance in Spider-Man the Animated Series back in Season 2, Episode 1, The Insidious 6. Kingpin totally calls him out, along with Owl. Hey, Hasbro, if you're listening, make an Owl figure. That would be pretty cool. But this one is Hammerhead, and he has always been a very cool figure to me. Now, he comes with a baseball bat, and it's just kind of like, that's it. There's no paint. There's nothing to it. It's all right. I mean, it's a bat. He comes with a couple extra hands. Now, right here, as you could say, he's got some brass knuckles on there, which I think is pretty cool, right? This is where he gets more comic booky. It does say head if I go ahead and flip the image on you. So if you punch somebody, you got hammer-headed, right? I hope that's what he means. But Hammerhead himself, this is a great representation. That taking, we'll say, based loosely on Spider-Man the Animated Series, going a little bit more comic booky, but you can see his animated counterpart. Yeah, it's pretty much, this is when he had his eyes open. He was kind of more like Dick Tracy in a way. He had little slits for eyes for most of the time. And I think they did a fantastic job. Plus, you can get him in that pose where he kind of knocks himself on the head and tells Spider-Man, you know, like, no worries there. Pure adamantium, baby. So that is very cool. So with the exception of, let's say, a lighter blue suit, more of a orange, more animated colors, right? It's always kind of poppy, kind of brings it out for the kids, makes it more exciting. I mean, I love a highlight on the hair. That would have been kind of cool, just to kind of give that gleam, right? That he's got adamantium metal plating in his head. But I like the pinstripes. I like what they did, even with the brass knuckles. I mean, it's goofy, but it's okay for what it is. And you get a pretty articulated reuse of a suited body, but one that works for a character, because that's what you think of with Hammerhead. There doesn't have to be really anything more to this character except for a flat-topped guy in a suit. Now, one of the hands really won't hold the bat, but if you swap them out, especially, let's say, with the brass knuckles, you can see that, yeah, I mean, it doesn't really do much for me, but I'm glad they included it. It's something different, something cool. But with the other hand, yeah, you can definitely get the bat going. So he does look menacing. He does look great. In all honesty, I would have loved for them kind of go once in a while, go the more NECA Toys route where they really pick things from particular episodes. So a cool tablet of time would have been great to include with this guy. I know, loosely based on the animated series, but in either case, I mean, I would have totally been down for something like that. Now, if you want to go ahead and compare him height-wise with, say, Wave 1's Spider-Man, it looks cool, it looks good, right? They'll go together nicely. And if you wanted to go the whole tablet of time route, one figure that I would really like if they would make eventually in the retro Spider-Man would be this version of the Vulture, the very 90s look for him. And I definitely won't turn down a more updated Lizard, that's for sure, more in his animated look, but yeah, pretty solid Hammerhead overall. Which then, of course, brings us to the Spider Armor Spider-Man, or how they're kind of calling it, the MK1 Spider Armor, Armored Spider-Man, however you want to call it. He's got that really cool silver and black costume, which, as a kid, yeah, it was totally rad, and he comes with a pair of extra hands. These are the web thwipping hands. Overall, the sculpt, the details, the silver on this guy are pretty cool, and he does come with 2 web effects. Now, I'm always one that says Spider-Man needs more webbing effects. So they're cool, but then when they don't really work in the sense of what do you do with this? Where do you put them? Do you just kind of put them on a play set or a standee or something like that? Because they don't really attach. They don't really form fit to any of the villains, like putting it on Shocker's face, for instance, or a leg or an arm or something like that. They don't really do much. They don't have enough to where they could attach, or you could probably put it through a hand or something like that, but that's what I mean. It's cool, but it doesn't really do much. A rocket would have been awesome, right? Straight from the animated series, or heck, even a laser that's built right into their armor. That would have been really cool touches. This Spider-Man, like I said, it doesn't really harken back, like it has the elements of Spider-Man the animated series or the old comic book suit, right? When he donned that whole armor thing. And it is, again, really well done. Nice silver paint, nice black to it. But it is, of course, the new Spider-Man PS4, PS5 video game look for the character, which, again, not a bad thing, but I totally prefer the more bulky armor plated. It looks better to me, but as I'm being an old man stickler on this one, of course. He's got peg holes on the bottom of his feet where he will, let's say, lose the whole like old school look for him. He does make up for in a lot of great posing. He really does articulate quite well. And the cool thing is that I'll give it to him all day. He is a pinless figure. So more of that. I think that that's definitely the way to go for future Marvel, all future Marvel Legends, right? I know that they're starting to enact that in a lot of their figures. The paint really is nice, even though I would say, if anything, right, he's a little bit too small, I think. But they're kind of going more for that video game look, because if you put him next to, let's say, Wave 1 Spider-Man or the animated Spider-Man, he's a little bit too short. I think that's where he kind of gets lost. Is he a little bit too short in that sense? But when you put him up next to the old Spider Armor Spider-Man, the other thing, for me at least, is, well, let's say, spring-loaded firing mechanism aside and all that jazz, he's missing the shield, and I think that that is really what is kind of cool. He's got that web shield, really cool, hooked into the arm. I just really wish that they would have put that. Even though it's not a video game, that's just something to me that's kind of missing. And yes, slowly but surely, we're building the Madam Web Spider-Man team, right? From Farewell Spider-Man and Spider-Wars and all that jazz. So we'll say a couple figures here and there left to go in so many ways. But yeah, it's nice to have a new Spider Armor Spider-Man. Even though he's not my favorite, he's still a dang good figure. Now, let me tell you, with this new figure, I have the perfect device and the perfect man to use it. And of course, I'm talking about Herman Schultz. Although we never see his face, we never know his name, he's just the Shocker to all of us. And for Spider-Man the Animated Series, he actually played a pretty big part for the most in the first couple seasons, right? He was always around. And I like that they brought him back in various ways. But then you have the extra hands, which do work. They don't articulate, but you can swap them out. I like that they gave him more like open hands. I do appreciate that. These effects are completely useless. They're not shocker related. Yeah, you want to say like, whoa, 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 that kind of thing, but no, it doesn't work. But the shocker, well, I'll tell you all day, it's a great looking shocker, but in the sense of Spider-Man, the animated series, it doesn't work for that. He's different colors, reds, blacks. He's got pupils in the eyes. Other than that, I mean, he makes for a great comic book looking shocker, that's for sure. But I do like that he's largely, yeah, a brand new figure. They did a great job on him. So all day I'll say that. I just, again, I'm going to be that stickler where I really wish they would have put the black lines. I'm one of those people where sculpted lines is great, but I do like when they do those types of lines where they're kind of just patterned on, like the Spider-Man costume, right? Couple instances here and there where you may want to heat this guy up in the arms and the legs, right? He kind of gets stuck. Just go easy. Nothing was going to break or anything like that. But yeah, just go easy. I'll tell you that. I do like how the more fisted hands within the gauntlets work. He's got a nice swivel. He's got a nice ab crunch. All these figures, it's the standard Marvel Legends articulation. And like I said, go easy on the knees. You don't want to do anything. He'll swivel at the boot, and he's got nice silver where it needs, nice browns overall. One day, maybe they'll do a more animated look where he's got the darker colors and the red and everything else. You can see the belts. It works. It kind of notches in there so it's not going to move around on you. But yeah, again, I got zero qualms with the shocker other than the fact that infinitely all day I would have preferred it to be a little bit more in the Spider-Man the Animated Series vein. The powers that come with this guy, right? I like the swap out hands, but then the whole energy blast effects, if you didn't know any better, you would think, is he magic? You know what I mean? Unless you knew who the shocker was. It just doesn't work for me. He does look good next to the Wave 1 Spider-Man the Animated Series. And, of course, we all know that famous overacting line by Mr. Christopher Daniel Barnes. He's going to look really nice with the black costume Spider-Man as well. As off as he is, right? You get it. Use your imagination, and you can definitely make it happen. But this one, I always like this part in the Alien Costume Saga Part 3, where Venom showed up and he annihilated Rhino and Shocker. And, you don't even know what he does to him. He just webs them up. That's all you see. But he laid the smackdown on these guys. In terms of the original Toy Biz figure from Spider-Man the Animated Series, it kind of does harken back. They did go with the browns. It's, again, not exactly cartoon accurate for either of them. Of course, the older one does have the black lines, which I'll give a thumbs up for that any day. But it really was utilizing the Shocker's blast effects. This is what I expect from the Shocker, not like magic sound effects. This is what we're going for. And, one day I would like to see more Spider-Man the Animated Series, more of that costumes, the villains, the looks, all of that, so we can get a pretty epic-looking Insidious 6. So, in either case, it is very cool. And just to kind of harken back to, got the perfect device, perfect man to use it, I would definitely like hey, you could put an Alistair Smythe in the chair, but the Ultimate Spider Slayer, Alistair Smythe, wouldn't be too shabby at all. And, of course, speaking of Shocker, right, that whole fight in the bell tower, which, as a kid, it kind of got lost on me who was saying what at one point, because everybody's yelling, and, well, now we know better. But you have a brand new, and this is what I just kind of call him. I've always called him the alien costume. Yeah, you call him Symbiote Spider-Man, black costume Spider-Man, whatever you want to say. But he's always the alien costume, Secret War Spider-Man, all that jazz. And they did do a pretty good job on him. Now, one thing I want to say is that, yes, he does come with a bevy of extra hands. You got web thwip, you got wall crawling, you got fisted hands. Again, no item holding hands, which, again, would have been cool when you're fighting villains like the Shocker and the Rhino on your shelves for obvious reasons, right? If you're going for the animated series. He does not have the dot on the hands, which actually does work in terms of Spider-Man the Animated Series. So it doesn't bother me at all because he didn't have the dot in the show. But overall, we'll say the Spider logo, right? Now, I understand they're going to be using the same body type, right, for these new Spider-Man figures. They have to form-fit it, but I really wish it just would have form-fit a little bit better. It's a nitpick, if anything. It's good that it's there, right? You got to have that. But the main thing, with all the great articulation that this guy has, because you're specifically telling me, right, this is Spider-Man the Animated Series, he really would have benefited from some blue highlights to him. I think that that would have just really made this character pop. Again, you could tell me all day, okay, yeah, the spider symbol is a little wonky here and there, but again, you got to make it look good with the joints and make it form fit to the body type, which really doesn't bother me, you know what I mean? But I'll give him this. The head sculpt, the eyes are perfect for the alien costume Spider-Man. I mean, just look at it in terms of the animation. If he would have had that blue, man, that would have been top notch right there. So again, it's not like I want, like, I need another black costume Spider-Man in my collection, like I need a hole in my head, right? But if they would have done that, just because we're going more Spider-Man the Animated Series with these releases and such, man, that blue highlight would have been awesome. Instead of all those extra hands, right? And because it is Spider-Man the Animated Series, we all know that the webbing comes out the top of his hand. He shoots it out, right? Well, we know that in the series, he doesn't have the black dot. It kind of just goops out of the white, right? It's kind of like a little pocket or something like that. Instead of the extra hands, a webbing effect would have been awesome. Or better yet, some kind of symbiote effect to put on him like he's up against the bell tower. That's what I would prefer instead of all these extra hands, which, again, they're nice, but there's only so many hands that you can display them with, whereas effects and everything would have been nice. Maybe some blue souls on the bottom. The blue highlights I would have taken all day over any accessory because I think that would have been just top notch. Because really, when you look at this Venom figure that was the Hasbro PulseCon exclusive, you see all the different highlights. Now, I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but for me, obviously being, you know, Spider-Man the Animated Series fan, I think it looks awesome. This was great to me, except for the not filling in the holes. But you know what I mean? It would have been great to have some blue effects on this guy. Because if you look at the old Marvel Legends, and we're not going to go too far down this road, just something I wanted to point out with pulling out other Marvel Legends figures. All this is going to be largely Toy Biz, the old school 90s Toy Biz. But the Red Hulk Target exclusive Spider-Man figure from back in the day, he did have dots on the back of his hands, right? Which, okay, that's not immediately Spider-Man the Animated Series, but the blues really made this figure pop. So I still love this figure, even though he's, so yeah, oh, that's old articulation. It's still dang awesome. But when you pair him up next to, let's say, the Spider-Man the Animated Series official releases, you had that weird symbiote thing that came out of his chest, right? It had the whole wind-up action, which, yeah, if you've seen my past videos, you know how that sound goes. Or you have the later released box set with the Rhino and the Kingpin for the alien costume, all of which have the dots on their hands, just FYI. Or you have other releases where Spider-Man is in mid-transformation, right? Or you kind of have, it's not so much, but because he had a white spider symbol, I pulled him out. But, you know, more so just a kind of different take on the whole symbiote taking over. But yeah, that's what I mean. Some extra effects, something like that, really would have elevated this figure because, I mean, yeah, it's really just, here's another articulated black costume Spider-Man. And for some of you, for me, as many black costume Spider-Mans I have from all over the ages and companies and all that kind of stuff, I mean, they've done it to death. So adding something, adding like the blues or symbiote effects, or kind of elevating it, giving him more accessories, something like that, other than just swap out hands, really would have been ideal. And then finally, yes, to kind of put him up against Rhino and Shocker, who he almost both killed in the Spider-Man the Animated Series. I mean, yeah, it looks pretty cool. But the blues would have been great on him. Not to beat a dead horse, of course. But our final figure, that this one, where the Hobgoblin, when he showed up on Spider-Man the Animated Series, remember that? They teased that right after the Venom saga. They go, oh yeah, it's Hobgoblin, right? And I was like, oh man, this is going to be great because you had the Joker voice. You had Mark Hamill's voice. So I'm going to nitpick this thing to death, so get ready, right? But I'm doing this out of love because I really love Spider-Man the Animated Series, and I still do like this figure. But hear me out, right? So you have the pumpkin bomb. Never in Spider-Man the Animated Series did he have a pumpkin bomb that was on fire before he threw it. It was always pre-ignited. He'd throw the thing, it'd kind of bounce, and then explode. So it's a reuse, I get it, but more pumpkin bombs, more non-fire, like the same thing over and over again. Let's change it up going forward. And then you have the Goblin Glider. Now, one thing I'll point out is that it has some interesting details to it. The engine, the face, everything else. They made it purple and they gave it red eyes. if you look at his glider from the animated series, all day, every day, yeah, that is pretty much the same glider in terms of the coloring and such. But that's really all it is. They just took a prior release glider, which doesn't work all too well, which we'll talk about in just a second. With the Hobgoblin figure, I would tell you this. They nailed the orange. They got the yellows, the blues, non-scale. He looks very animated. So in that sense, I'm stoked. He's even got the purple bag, which slings over his shoulder, right? They're counting that as a new accessory, right? But if you look at the face, the animated series Hobgoblin has such an awesome expression, face, everything's just wackadoo about him. This head sculpt doesn't fit him, and it doesn't work for what they're trying to go for with this figure. So again, I get it. It's repurposed. They're just trying to redo it. The hood and everything else, I'll let it go. It looks good, right? The oranges, they nailed it. But pupils maybe would have been great. Just a new head sculpt really would have been so dynamic for this figure and really just made it like, oh, wow, that is so dang cool. Now, in terms of the boots, the colors, right? Yellow at the top of his little pirate boots and orange for the bottom. So I really wish they would have painted that. That would have been kind of cool to have that be even more accurate. And the cape itself, non-tattered. It's got like a pinkish red on the undertone right there. That would have been cool. Even if you kept it tattered and painted underneath, that would have been awesome. But see, that's where that reuse comes in. And I really wish, I mean, you guys got capes. They could have used other capes. You didn't have to use that same one. That's just a bummer. But, yeah, peg holes on the bottom of his feet. It's really like a frustrating figure to me because it was so close. It was so close for such an awesome looking Marvel Legends figure. But I'll tell you this all day. The glider does not work at all. And I've seen people, they've written in saying the same thing. It didn't work the first time around with the prior release Hobgoblin that had this. It's a worthless glider. It doesn't do anything to elevate the figure. I would have gladly just taken the Green Goblin one they released and had it in a purple color. That would have been awesome. That way you could do the stand and everything else. I don't know why they didn't go that route, but this glider is not very good at all. And in talking about accessories, whenever you get Hobgoblin figures, an extra hand, a more open hand, right? Or just a hand that can hold the pumpkin bomb, they hold them, but you're just putting it in the hand, just like that, right? There's nothing securing it. And after all the Hobgoblins, every single figure that's ever existed for the Hobgoblin, we still don't have like that technology. I don't know why. It's enough of the reuse. Let's get some actual pieces that work here. Because even if you want to do like, hey, I'm going to throw this sucker, right? No, it would never stay in his hand. So we learned our lessons with the Toy Biz ones, with putting it in his hand, having him like able to chuck the bomb, but yeah, it really doesn't work. And you can take the purple purse off and you can have him chuck it and blow up a ceiling, right? You can do that. So I'll give him that. That actually works. But the particular Spider-Man the Animated Series guns that he had back in the day, or even the time dilation accelerator, those are really cool. Very show Spider-Man the Animated Series specific. And that would have been awesome to have. And then you have the glider. Like I said, I've beaten a dead horse with this. But you look at the old Toy Biz massive glider from the show, more or less, and the purple one that fits onto the back of the giant one, and you see all the detail. That glider still holds up. I would have loved to just had a new glider. That would have been awesome. But if you look at it in terms of what's come before, right? You had this really cool 90s Hobgoblin that was, again, made, and then they form-fitted it for the cartoon, or hey, vice versa. It doesn't matter. But in either case, it was what you saw in the cartoon. So if you take this new Hobgoblin, I mean, with the changes, with the different updates here and there, having the different boots, the cape, a different head sculpt, man, that would have been just awesome. That would have been hands down the coolest Hobgoblin ever. Because if you utilize other old Toy Biz figures and using their accessories and stuff, you can achieve pretty cool Hobgoblin, you know what I mean? And looking at him in terms of the torn cape, again, I'll say all day, I really wish they would have just given him a different cape from a different figure, something like that, because the torn one doesn't do anything. It doesn't scream animated series. It's just like, oh, here's the old comic book one, and we'll slap the animated series onto it, which, hey, you know what? In all honesty, Toy Biz kind of did that back in the day too. So I'm not too hard up on it. This is just a for fun video. Ultimately, I bought the figure. I'm happy with it, but these are just the things that I'm like, you know what I mean? And then I go home and and I don't think about it for the rest of the day. This is just for this video, right? But if you really wanted to have some fun with the whole mutant agenda, right? You could say, hey, who's the clown in the Halloween costume? Well, it's Hobgoblin. Now, there is a new Wolverine coming directly based on the animated series, and kind of with how I'm feeling about Marvel Legends, that's definitely where my feelings are kind of headed in terms of collecting them, but in terms of putting him with Spider-Man from Wave 1, and then, you know what, for fun, smash them together. Yeah, you get the Spider-Goblin out of it, which is a great old school Toy Biz figure. I have a full video on my channel if you want to go ahead and look at him. So while I have my thoughts on Hobgoblin, he's still okay. Yeah, he's okay. And just for fun, right? I got this guy in the mail right around the time when I was kind of finishing this video. And for me, let's say Spider-Man the Animated Series did have some appearances from Doctor Strange, which does work. Now, in terms of kind of pairing him up and kind of how he looked in Spider-Man the Animated Series, there is one specific accessory that he does come with, even though it doesn't really look like what it looked like in the show. But some changes here and there that were very animated specific for Doctor Strange kind of shows through on this new Walmart exclusive. Now, I do like the powers, the effects. They work for Doctor Strange. That is cool. You get 2 extra head portraits. One of them, the eyes are closed, which definitely works for a Doctor Strange. And then you got that whole blue-headed hood ensemble that they kind of tried to go with. And it doesn't look too bad, but it doesn't really match this particular costume. Glad they included it, but it doesn't really fit. But the eyes closed, kind of meditating or getting the powers going sort of deal, and you got all the white in the hair, he's got the wingtips and everything else, you put it on top of the body, and yeah, it does work really well. This is a very cool looking Doctor Strange, very classic, very old school, and I totally dig that because he comes with extra hands, right? He's doing the whole Doctor Strange thwip, you know, if you want to go that route. He comes with a more, I guess you could say, modern slash, old-fashioned weapon for Doctor Strange to be kind of using in the more modern comics. It's got the axe, which does nice detail. And then you have the Wand of Watum, and that's the one that I was talking about from Spider-Man the Animated Series. Even though it really looks nothing like it does in the comics, and you have a Spider-Man from the animated wave that can't hold anything, of course. But yeah, it had more like a skull head sort of deal, whereas this one's got like more horns. And for whatever reason, you can actually kind of twist these and they will pop off the ends. So I guess if you had a figure where you kind of just wanted to slide it through the hand and pop that back on, you can go that route. But in all honesty, while there is some subtle changes here and there to Doctor Strange, a little bit more purple, a little bit more orange in the animated outing, when he and Spider-Man team up and go up against Baron Mordo and Dormammu, right? Well, at least the first time. Yeah, it looks cool. I definitely dig it. He's even got the little leopard print gloves, which is great. I love this little sash right here. Just overall, it really does encapsulate the look of Doctor Strange. And he does have some good articulation to him. Now, I wouldn't say you get the arms going all the way up, but for my taste, for my preferences, even though the cape is permanently attached, you can't take it off. I mean, it works. It's going to hinder the articulation in some sense, even the skirt piece and such. But, I mean, I got really little to no complaints. For being on your shelf, he's a pretty solid-looking Doctor Strange. And he will go nicely with your Spider-Man. Now, again, if they ever wanted to do an animated retro release where they paint the whites on his costume, make him a little bit more purple with an orange cape, I wouldn't mind that at all. So to kind of wrap up that little detour and go back to Spider-Man the Animated Series, overall, it's a good wave. There is some things here and there. Hammerhead is my absolute favorite. I love that figure. I think that in matching up with Spider-Man the Animated Series, it looks great. Even in matching up with comic books, it looks great. Ben Reilly is making a return to comics right now, so that'll please a lot of people, right? Shocker is a great looking figure, even though, of course, I would have preferred it to be a lot more Spider-Man the Animated Series-ish. But it is a good-looking comic book Shocker. I honestly will tell you, the Armored Spider-Man and the Symbiote Spider-Man are kind of at the bottom of the list for me, even though, hey, they're well-articulated, but they're missing those key examples, whereas I think I've already had those in older figures that I have. I like the looks more of the older Armored Spider-Man. There's not to say that it might not be your cup of tea, but for me, in all honesty, yeah, it's just okay. And that's okay because guess what? There's going to be many more of these figures later down the road at some point. But as always, I am curious to know what you guys think about this new wave of Spider-Man retros. Is it for you? Will you be grabbing? Comment below. Let me know. Let's talk everything Spider-Man the Animated Series. And I'm going to leave you guys with that. As always, drink some great coffee, eat some great food, but most importantly, remember, let me know down in the comments which figures, which characters would you like to see them tackle next for future Retro Spider-Man the Animated Series waves. And when they do, let me know what you found. I'll talk to you guys soon. Adios.